6 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
Habeas corpus filed by the attorneys representing Vybz Cartel and his co-accused was denied in the Home Circuit Court in downtown Kingston today. Lead Story wants to take you behind the scenes for a description of the courtroom drama as Justice Andrea Thomas set the context and then delivered the decision that has the whole of Jamaica talking. We'll also take you to Portmore in St. Catherine, Gaza, where fans and family and friends of Vybz Cartel awaited news of the release of the World Boss. And then we'll get a perspective from eminent counsel about what from here for Vybz Cartel and his team as they look to pry him from the grip of this state. That's Lead Story. That's the scene here, CVM TV. Let's start the show. Welcome to Lead Story here on this Thursday. It's been a momentous day, a lot happening in Jamaica and internationally. Two big court cases that had the nation gripped. Vybz Cartel and his co-accused at the Home Circuit Court in downtown Kingston and further upfield up north, Donald Trump and those 34 counts of falsifying records in the run-up to the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Trump found guilty. We'll try to squeeze in a piece of that in the back end of the show. But they say dance a yard before you dance abroad. And certainly Vybz Cartel's fans not dancing this evening because he will remain behind bars, him and his co-accused, after the application for a writ of habeas corpus filed by the men's lawyers was denied today in the Home Circuit Court by Justice Andrea Thomas. We are speaking, well, I'm going to speak today with two of our reporters here from CVM TV who had different legs of the relay running. Ramon Gordon was with his colleagues in court, and the man over there in Gaza was Ronaldo Adams, looking and gauging reaction from the family friends of Vybz Cartel who were waiting, hoping that, as the song said, the world boss would indeed be freed. Gentlemen, welcome to Lead Story.
Thank you for having us.
George. Excellent. Ramon, let me start with you. Courtroom, we understand that the people gathered in one courtroom had to be moved because there were too many people. Tell me about that, first of all.
Absolutely. We have to go back first. We started our coverage pretty early. We were on location at like 11 a.m. When we got there, it was obvious that something significant was certainly on the way. Police, military forces, it was a joint operation, and a part of the court was cordoned off. So the thought was that Vybz Cartel would make an appearance. And when that rumor got out, persons started flocking to the building to see the infamous world boss. He did not show up, but persons still stayed on because they wanted to know the outcome. So they did change courtrooms. We moved to a larger courtroom, and you know the outcome of the case. They're going to stay behind bars. The defense argued that they were being detained illegally, especially since the Privy Council has quashed the conviction, but the Privy Council did not enter a verdict. They left that up to our local appeals court. So that's what we're looking forward to now, coming June 10.
Estimate for me the first courtroom that you and your colleagues were in, along with members of the legal fraternity and other interested parties. About how many people were in that space?
At least 50.
And then so the 50 were then moved to courtroom 1, yes. I'm told. Did the 50 swell, or is it the same 50 that were in
the same 50? Yes. The only problem was the initial room was just not big enough. Persons were pressed up against the door, looking into the glass. So it was really just, it wasn't that it was so much people that the court was overwhelmed. Yes. It was just a logistics thing.
Tell me about the tone, the mood in the room when the judge walked in.
Everybody was eager. There was anticipation. Of course, you stand when the judge enters. But beyond that, there was this atmosphere of, intrigue, because everybody wants to know what is going to happen. Because we saw the police outside, and like I said earlier, persons thought Cartel was also going to make an appearance. He did not. But persons wanted to hear what the judge was going to say in lieu of that. So, yes.
And I'm sure rapt attention is the way to describe everybody as the justice went through the context of the case before arriving at her decision. Tell me about that process.
Oh, absolutely. It was a very technical breakdown. I'm going to leave that explanation to the legal expert.
Yes.
But she left no stone unturned. She went through, she referenced the laws that supported her decision on the matter, and it was a really comprehensive ruling. I can't wait to get my hand on the physical copy. We'll provide a breakdown of that tomorrow.
About how long did she take over her summation before making the decision?
About, well, the preamble was about 20, 30 minutes. Yes.
Yeah. You were in Gaza, Ronaldo. You traveled to Portmore. Tell me, in terms of was there a crowd gathered in Waterford to heralding the news? What was the atmosphere like?
Well, George, to be honest with you, when the team and I arrived in Gaza, I was a bit bemused. I was expecting to see, as you mentioned, a gathering, but the numbers were a bit scanty. Nonetheless, the support was there, and I spoke to those who were willing to speak. And beforehand, before the verdict was given, much of them were confident, saying that, you know, teacher come home, we don't have no doubt. However, afterwards, it was scanty before. Afterwards, you barely saw anyone. Everyone was disappointed, and they're just now waiting for June 10.
And you know, we do bad by our viewers and those watching us, because when we say Gaza, the municipal authorities must be turning their eyes. We're talking about Waterford in St. Catherine, a part of the constituency of Southeast St. Catherine, but Cartel and his colleagues have christened, or for a long time have called a part of Waterford Gaza their playground. And so when we say Gaza, we're referring properly to Waterford. Not that many Jamaicans need the explanation, but not only Jamaicans are watching us. So, Ronaldo, when the moment came and the information came from the court, no release, what was the reaction then?
Everyone was disappointed. I mean, everyone was disappointed, because they touted Cartel as a community builder, excuse me, and they said that he has helped to develop the Waterford Primary School, the Waterford High School, just giving him his props, right? They even went as far as to rally for his innocence, and they're just wanting their hero to return home.
Yeah, Ramon, last before we go, whichever way the judge went today, I can imagine the court would have gasped. Did the court gasp when she said no release?
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Buchanan was very animated as she was reading.
I said Buchanan, his attorney.
He was just very animated. Whenever she explained her reasoning for a particular decision, he'd make a face. So there was this little informal back and forth that really colored the event. And even afterwards, I forgot to share that when he was leaving, he declined media requests for interviews. He left immediately after the decision was handed down. As he left, supporters outside started running towards him because they thought he was Cartel.
Oh my.
And when they realized that he wasn't Cartel, they started asking him questions about the case. He left, obviously, but it was really interesting to see how engaged and excited these people were for the event.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen, for a job well done. After the break, eminent counsel steps in to explain some of the technicalities around what happened in court today and to opine on what from here, given the latest twist in this Vibes Cartel saga. More on Lead Story after these.
Fitness, brought to you by Your Plate and Nature Valley.
At MSW Events, we believe that every love story deserves a grand celebration, and so we invite you to be a part of this unforgettable experience. Whether you're saying I do for the first time or renewing your vows, MSW Events knows how to turn your special day into a truly unforgettable experience.
Welcome back to the almost said welcome back to the Vibes Cartel murder trial. Welcome back to Lead Story here on CVM TV. We're talking about the Vibes Cartel matter as it has entered a new phase today. Justice Andrea Thomas ruling that, she would not be granting that, not be acceding to that request, the application for a writ of habeas corpus. She denied that, meaning that Cartel and his co-accused stay behind bars until the matter of whether retrial or not is ruled on by the court. The issue is, it's important to note that one of these co-accused, Kahira Jones, was not subject to today's proceedings because he has another matter pending, so a no order was issued where his matter, where his part in these proceedings were concerned. So the proceedings today did not apply to Kahira Jones, who we all know is one of those who was convicted alongside Cartel in 2014. Attorney at Law Jacqueline Cummings joins me on the set. Counsel, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. I need you now to do some explanation for me because on the gentleman, Bert Samuels, is also on Zoom. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. Good to have you, Sir Bert. Lady Jacqueline, here we go now. I need you to explain, again, I'm sure you'd have done this a million times, but a writ of habeas corpus, because judging by the commentary online, a lot of people don't even understand what that is, even though they have an interest in the case.
A writ of habeas corpus is an application made to a judge to say, Judge, I want the prosecution to, or the police to justify why this particular person has been detained, arrested, in custody, or in prison. And the writ is for the judge to say, bring forward the body of that person and give an explanation as to why the person is in that position, because the liberty of the subject is paramount. Persons cannot be just locked up without any just cause.
So the move by Cartel's attorneys and his co-accused to go the route of the writ of habeas corpus, just for clarity, was this application the one to make in these specific circumstances? Could there have been another route to trying to get the men released?
Yes, because this would be the better route because there is a bail act. Once you're charged of any offense, because remember, he's no longer convicted at this point in time.
Yes.
They are now just charged.
Yes.
Once you're charged with any offense, you can apply for bail.
Yes.
Bail is an application to say, I would want to be able to release out of custody of the state pending the trial of my matter or the appeal of my matter. However, there is a provision in the Bail Act that says if when you were on the commencement of your trial prior to conviction, you were not on bail, you cannot get bail or apply for bail pending your appeal. So the problem with this particular case, and the reason why I believe Mr. Buchanan went the route of habeas corpus is because there is no hard and fast rule as to what happens once the Privy Council has quashed your conviction and sent the matter back for the Court of Appeal to determine whether the case should be retried or whether a verdict of acquittal should be entered for all the persons. So that particular absence in the law is what drove Mr. Buchanan to go to court to say, Judge, I'm asking you to bring forward my client to justify why he is still being held in custody.
Bert Samuels, a lot of people, a lot of newsrooms found themselves in a twist and almost got lost in the law. That's not their expertise. That's why we're leaning on you and Lady Jacqueline Cummings, because here's the thing. Some tweets went out to say Cartel was denied bail. Others simply said Cartel was not granted release, because there seems to be a struggling understanding whether or not it was bail he was denied or whether she just denied the application for the writ of habeas corpus, meaning he won't be released. Can you explain the language and the meaning and intention in this case?
Well, it's an unusual situation. We're not used to this as lawyers very often. So what has happened is if you are detained by the police, the Constitution says that your question of your bail should be visited, speedily. So here it is. It's not as though they have been arrested. It's that the conviction have been set aside and an order given for the Court of Appeal to deal with the question whether there should be a retrial or not. Not many citizens have found themselves in this halfway house. And there's still a debate between lawyers, a divided opinion on whether they are still charged or they are not charged. Nonetheless, habeas corpus is something that you can always go to the court for the prosecution to show whether you're lawfully detained. And no doubt the judge had to decide whether their status is that they're lawfully detained. I still am not sure whether I agree that they're lawfully detained. And I think out of just guidance, this matter should be taken to the Court of Appeal. However, because in another 11 days' time, the matter will come before the Court of Appeal, maybe it will be of academic value only, because if the Court of Appeal says no retrial, they're home. If the Court of Appeal says retrial, then they can apply for bail, right then and there. So the options are open in several directions, but it had to be habeas corpus because they were not arrested and detained by a police officer, or they were not formally charged recently. So it's a middle ground that I'm still not sure the answer to it.
Yes, hear you on that. Let's take the break and come right back. Speaking with eminent counsel about the cartel situation today, the ruling by the judge, and of course we'll have enough time to talk about what from here for Adidja Palmer and company.
The time by Grace. Taste that moves you is
6:45.
With a chance. Jamaica! Jamaicans draw first blood. Damari Gray scores! Mikel Antonio, and it's a goal!
The Reggae Boys take the lead.
And Jamaica puts this one on ice.
Attention homeowners, property managers, plumbers, and contractors. Jamaica Plumbing Supplies is having a store-wide sale with up to 20% off. Need to upgrade your bathroom or kitchen? From pipes and fittings to fixtures, basins, showers, and bathtubs. Power your plumbing projects with our variety of tools. Hurry up! The discount lasts 1 week only, May 27th to June 1st. Visit us at 56 Malines Road or 62 Congreve Park, Portmore. Jamaica Plumbing Supplies. Let's save water. Conditions apply.
Welcome back to Lead Story here on CVM TV. Speaking with Bert Samuels, who's on Zoom, and Jacqueline Cummings, who's keeping my company in the studio. The DPP has issued a statement, has just come to hand. It says, an application for writ of habeas corpus filed on May 17, 2024, on behalf of the applicants, Adidja Palmer, Sean Campbell, and Andre St. John, was heard in the Home Circuit Court on Thursday, May 29, 2024, which of course is today. The court ruled today, the DPP statement says, that this application requesting the applicant's release is denied and that the superintendent of the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center is acting lawfully in keeping the applicants in custody. The court noted there is no order from any court indicating that the applicants are to be released, as the order from the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council quashing the convictions was not an order for release. The applicants are not eligible, the statement continues, for bail pending appeal due to the offense for which they are before the court pursuant to the Bail Act. Due to the pending matter before the Court of Appeal on the issue of retrial of the substantive case, this is the extent of our updates at this time from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. Is the statement in order, Counsel?
Yes, the statement would be in order, but here's the issue I would take with that pronouncement. For you to be an inmate at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center,
yes,
you have to be convicted of an offense.
Yes.
Because you're in possession of the Department of Corrections.
Yes.
As it stands now, Adidja Palmer is not a convict any longer.
Yes.
So on what basis is he being held at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center? Because he's no longer a convict. Mm-hmm. So therefore, if the writ of habeas corpus is to remove him from the custody of the state, mm-hmm, in terms of the prison facilities, mm-hmm, then that application will be correctly done, mm-hmm, because there's no basis to hold him there. The question is, what do? Do you move him to a police station lockup, mm-hmm, because he is still under the charge? Mm-hmm. Or do you keep him in that facility for whatever reason, mm-hmm, the case may be? So it'll be interesting to read the judge's decision, yes, and how she rationalized that, because I suspect the application was that the prison authorities have no basis to hold him any longer.
Yeah, Bert Samuels, I commit the same statement to you and ask you if you are in lockstep with what the DPP has said in her reasoning about the verdict today, the ruling today.
Well, the only status he could have, so he's not a prisoner because he's not serving a sentence. That sentence has been set aside. So maybe they could say he's an appellant because he's waiting on a Court of Appeals decision. So maybe he's being deemed to be an appellant, but he has not appealed. It is that the Privy Council, the highest court, has said the Court of Appeal will deal with this matter. So maybe on the one hand, he could be seen as an appellant, given that status by the Privy Council. That's the only way I think the judge could wiggle out of the fact, as my friend has said, that he is being held as a prisoner. Certainly he's not a prisoner.
Yeah. Jacqueline Cummings, so here's the thing then. In terms of what the judge did today and the basis on which she did it, are we saying that the fact of the murder charge not having disappeared, the conviction has disappeared, but the murder charge remains, that the judge really had nowhere else to go but to rule in the way she did?
I wouldn't necessarily say she had nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
Her role is to ensure that the state has a basis to deny him his liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And her basis would be there's a murder charge still hanging over his head,
Mm-hmm.
which is to be decided by the 10th of June or whenever the Court of Appeal makes their decision. So that would be the basis for the state to hold him in their custody and the other gentlemen who are held with him. The question is whether or not should he be held by the prison authorities or by the state in some other capacity, whereby he's no longer a convict. He's just a person awaiting a hearing from a court to determine his fate.
And Bert Samuels, you mentioned the fact that case law is imperfect where the precedence for this kind of thing is concerned. So upon review, now that you've had the chance to look back at it, given that the judge's ruling is here, was it a long shot? Was it a case of the attorneys for Cartel and company chancing their arm to see if they'd come up trumps in making this writ of habeas corpus application?
I think it was a good decision because here it is. How do you explain to your clients the day after the Privy Council says your conviction is quashed? How do you explain to them that they're going to say, what am I doing here? You know, I am to come out, and the decision by the Court of Appeal, I will go and to the court to hear that. So it was really to do with an uncertainty, a gross uncertainty as to their status. Now, we don't have the benefit of the written judgment of the judge. If I were being interviewed, I could be more informed and be more informative. So that I would love to see how she wrestled out of that situation.
Yeah. So Jacqueline Cummings, what, if anything, because I have to ask you the question that the casual viewer out there is asking, especially those who are sympathetic to Mr. Palmer and company. What, if anything, does today's decision by the judge mean for what's likely to happen when Cartel and company go before the Court of Appeal?
It would affect what happens with the Court of Appeal's decision because it's two separate issues. One deals with whether or not he should have back his liberty, and the other one deals with whether or not the murder conviction remains and is a retrial, or he walks out with no record at all in relation to that conviction. So it's two separate issues that the courts are dealing with. One is the Supreme Court judge determine whether or not his liberty should be restored, and the other one determines what is to happen with the retrial issue.
Yeah, and Bert Samuels, the obvious question again is the issue of a fair trial if it goes that way. Because if Cartel goes again to submit himself to this process again in a country such as Jamaica, tiny in context, what are his prospects, you believe, in your wisdom, for him to be tried impartially by a jury of his peers?
So let us say the accused men, because there are three others.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
The accused men can mount a very serious constitutional challenge to a fair trial, because in the public space there's been so much of the evidence which has gone into the public space, in the videos in the trial have gone into public space. Their argument would be, based on what is out there in the public space, can I get a fair trial? Can I get 7 impartial persons who would not be affected by what has been said in the press for the past 13 years about this trial? Secondly, there was tampering with evidence. It is a fact that the phone that they said, allegedly said that Cartel was using and was being used when it was in police custody to make calls. And therefore, the tampering with the evidence is a huge problem. Remember, there's a tampering with the jury, but we also now have a tampering with the evidence, and the integrity of the evidence is going to be seriously challenged. I suspect that should they order that there should be a retrial, this is an issue, that is whether they can get a fair trial. It's going to be an issue that has to be decided on before this matter goes to trial, and which may go all the way back up to the Privy Council.
Counsel, I come to you for the same question. Do you think, if it goes away for retrial, that Mr. Palmer and company stand a fair chance of getting an impartial panel of jurors to consider the case?
Well, first of all, we have to know that the law has now changed. So the prosecution and defense can agree not to use a jury for the retrial.
There you go.
They can decide that they want a judge alone to try their case. And therefore, the issue of tainted jurors would not be an issue. The second one is that it's 11 years. It's not 11 years, it's 2011. It's 13 years since this incident took place. What would the memory of the witnesses be, and what would be the scenario in relation to the integrity of the exhibits and all the cases that they are there?
Yes.
There could be exhibits or evidence that would be in Mr. Palmer and his other co-accused favor that is no longer available. There could be witnesses that could be no longer available for the prosecution. So all of these factors would take into play. So I really don't want to trample on the Court of Appeals decision-making process, but that's one of the things that they have to consider when they deal with the issue of the retrial.
Yeah. A high-stakes game, the liberty of men at stake in this case. Cartel and his co-accused, they suffered a setback today, but it's not the end of the road. And those who are trumping for their release would have felt some disappointment today. But at the same time, a man is dead. And what about justice for him and those who love him, those who wish that he were here to assist them in their daily lives? It's a very, very high-stakes game, as I said, and it's not over yet. The final act has not even started to unfold. Speaking of that, and I said Trump for a reason, Donald convicted in New York, hush money trial, all 34 counts. The first president, former or sitting, to be found guilty of felony crimes, and the ignominy will not be erased by history. Trump, as usual, pugnacious. Here is what he said to the press immediately after leaving the courtroom.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. But the real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution.